I would now like to welcome to the floor. I'm delighted to welcome UNISON's Senior Vice President, James Anthony. As James comes onto the rostrum, I would like to say that James was elected as Vice President in June 2025, a registered nurse from Birmingham, Chair of Policy Development and Campaigns Committee. James joined UNISON in Hull local government branch when he got his first job as a care worker in a privatized residential home, and continued his membership when he went to do nurse training. James was first elected in the NEC Young Members seat and currently represents health members. He is committed to equalities and supporting the work of our self-organized groups, and is active within the LGBT+ self-organized group. James has always been active at a local level and has been chair of 2 different health branches. I invite you to speak to the conference, James. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone. It's always great to follow contested Standing Orders Committee reports, so the conference is definitely awake and knowing what's going on at that point. So yes, I'm James Anthony, UNISON's Vice President, and thank you for inviting me here today. I want to pass on greetings and solidarity from our President, Catherine McKenna, who would have very much wanted to be here, but her son's getting married, so I think we can probably give her a weekend off for that. And it is a great pleasure to be here and to speak to this conference and stand alongside black members who played such a vital role in our union and across public services. And it was mentioned that I first got involved as a young member, and actually coming in the hall and looking out today, I can see lots of black activists that have both helped and inspired me over that journey, over quite a lot of years, because it was quite a long time since I stopped being a young member. But it's great to see that the influence that you've had on me, what you've taught me about black activism and self-organisation is really important. And I want to praise the work of your National Committee, the chairing team, officers, and of course the black members on the NEC who keep us in check and work hard to advance the cause of black members in UNISON. I also want to slightly unusually talk about my day job and a little bit of black history. Now, I know it's not Black History Month, but my old comrade Roger Mackenzie once said to me, you should talk about black history every month rather than just once a year. So, as has been said, I'm a nurse and very proud of it, but you might not know that I'm a specialist in congenital heart disease. So that means I look after people who were born with their heart conditions. And one of the very first operations for blue babies, which is still done today in some circumstances, is called a BT shunt, named after the surgeon, Alfred Blaylock, and the doctor, Helen Taussig, that first were involved in the operation. But that misses a name. It misses the name of an inspirational black man called Vivian Thomas. Thomas was the one who developed the surgical techniques required on animal models. He even stood over the shoulder of the surgeon, directing them how to do the operations. But Thomas wasn't a doctor. Being a black man born in the American South in 1910, he wasn't able to go to medical school, and yet was a pioneer in cardiac surgery. And all cardiac surgery comes from the operations that those that were pioneered in children in congenital heart disease. And to me, this is an example of why black history matters. So many names like Vivian Thomas's get lost. But it's now that it's catching on that we actually call it the BTT shunt, the Blaylock-Thomas-Taussig shunt. His name there in the centre, because that is where he deserves to be. It's very clear to me that we need to talk about these heroes. But coming to the present day, and what an uncertain time it is, both internationally and closer to home. UNISON is clearly extremely concerned about the dangerous military escalation in the Middle East, which so far shows no sign of abating. The death toll is already substantial and at risk of putting the region into a protracted conflict. And though it's dropped out of the headlines, Palestine and the situation in both Gaza and the West Bank remain high on UNISON's agenda. I also want to mention the ongoing genocide in Sudan, where the world looks on in horror but seems to be able to do nothing. Beyond this, Trump's threat towards Greenland and elsewhere, coming at the same time as Russia's assault on Ukraine and America's disgraceful attack on Venezuela, there is a sense that the rules-based international order is under threat like never before. Trump set up what he called the Board of Peace. It seems to me that actually he's just bored of peace. It's also an increasingly unequal world. There was a record number of billionaires created worldwide last year, boosting their collective wealth by more than £13 trillion. And yet at the same time, efforts to fight global poverty and relieve hunger have stalled. And we know that inequality is not experienced equally. Across the UK and globally, black communities and other racialised groups continue to face the sharpest impacts of economic injustice, discrimination and structural inequalities. At home, the issues are also very serious. Since the global financial crash, it has felt like there's been no let-up, austerity, war and pandemics. Public services and our members have really struggled. And all parts of the UK continue to bear the scars of 14 years of Tory neglect. The impact of austerity continues to be felt by our members and the services we deliver every day. Hospitals crumbling, local services like libraries and leisure centres facing cuts and closures, universities and colleges teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, and public sector pay failing miserably to keep up with the cost of living. Our communities are suffering too. Food banks handing out a parcel every 10 seconds over the last winter, with more and more households being pushed into homelessness due to the shrinking supply of social housing. There are 4.5 million children growing up in poverty. And we are seeing improvements in life expectancy slow down or even go into reverse in some of our most deprived communities. And we know that poverty, inequality, and cuts to public services have disproportionately affected black communities across the UK. Nothing showed the impact of inequality more starkly than the COVID-19 pandemic. Black communities faced heightened risk while being more likely to be the vital key workers that were exposed to the violence. As I stand here today, I remember a great rep from my own branch, who was a member of my branch at the time, who lost his life to COVID, Dino Vidu, a nurse and a UNISON rep, and many of you may know him as he was an active in black members. At his funeral, we were given gifts by his family, and I have mine with me in my bag every day. A stone with one word on it that said gratitude. I carry that stone because I do have gratitude for Dino and all those that put their lives on the line for us during the pandemic. But there's also anger. This week's COVID inquiry report laid out that the NHS was suffering well before the pandemic, and it was teetering on the brink of disaster when the pandemic started, only saved from collapse by the superhuman efforts of its workforce. The report also highlights the disproportionate impact on black workers. Who we know are more vulnerable to the virus, left feeling undervalued and as if they were deemed expendable. Now, UNISON gave evidence to that inquiry and did so by gathering the experience of members like you. But we cannot allow what happened in COVID to be forgotten. We cannot allow our NHS to come to the brink of collapse again. We cannot allow black people's health to be treated so recklessly ever again. There must be accountability and there must be action. And since the global financial crash, it felt like there has been no let-up. And this feeling of relentless struggle, with a feeling that our services and our local communities are slowly crumbling, this leads people to look for answers and look for change. And for some, it's the old easy answer of scapegoating migrants, and populist far-right policies are on the rise. So a major priority for UNISON this year will be the May elections and the need to respond to the threat from reform. The future of our NHS, education, council services and the environment is at stake. The safety and security of our members who have migrated to work in our country is on the line. The rise of divisive and racist rhetoric also pose a direct threat to black workers and black communities. It's crucial we come together and mobilise our members. We need to highlight the damage reform victories do to our public services and the division that further success for them will cause for our communities. After all, this is a party that, if elected, intends to rip up the Equality Act, intends to bring in an ICE-style agency dedicated to deporting people, and intends to scrap the new Employment Rights Act immediately. Not only are these policies wrong, they are also deeply unpopular with the public. So we have to make sure that voters are fully aware of the dangers that Farage and his bunch of failed Tory cronies really are. But let's be honest, part of the reason why reform have been able to rise up the polls has been the unpopularity of recent Westminster governments and the current one. There have been many missteps and failed policies, whether it's on welfare reform, the timid approach to taxing the rich, or the disgraceful attacks on asylum seekers and our migrant workers. And this must stop. UNISON has been proudly standing alongside our migrant workers and will continue to do so. We know that many migrant workers are also black workers who make an enormous contribution to our public services and communities. The government's immigration white paper has caused huge damage and disruption to the lives of our members and their families. And the attacks on asylum seekers are a new low, aiming to target those who sought refuge, many vulnerable and traumatised, and many of them have been providing vital services to their communities. Being tough on immigration may be a soundbite that appeals to ministers, but make no mistake, it is a race to the bottom, and only serves to embolden racists and legitimise the politics of division. UNISON's organising migrant workers' work, particularly in the care sector, has shown UNISON at our best. The work done that enables these members doing vital jobs in horrendous conditions to tell their truth to power, and I know politicians have been shocked by what they have heard from our members. Thank you to everyone who's been involved in this, and it doesn't stop. Our work, your work, is building pressure on the government, and more MPs are speaking out. And let me clear, we will not let up on the pressure until the disgraced ILR proposals are dropped, until we get a social care visa system for the sector, and until we have a system that treats our migrant worker members with the dignity they deserve. And we know that racism and discrimination feels that it's on the rise, and you will know that better than me. We've seen attacks on mosques and synagogues, and in my own region, we've seen physical attacks on the street, up to the disgraceful and abhorrent sexual attacks on Sikh women in the West Midlands. An absolute disgrace. And this is why UNISON, alongside the TUC and more than 80 other organisations, are supporting the Together March on the 28th of London. 28th of London? 28th of March in London. This will be a national demonstration for hope, unity and solidarity. standing against the far right. And we want UNISON's presence to be massive on the day, with branches marching alongside their members and their branch banners. So if you haven't already, please sign up to take part. And because demonstrations like this can lay down a marker, show our strength, and give energy to build local campaigns. But colleagues, they cannot tackle reform alone. In UNISON, we know that our biggest influence is with our own members, in our workplaces, and in our communities. That's why you here today are vitally important. Every time you have a conversation of hope that puts a different perspective, that takes the discussion from the abstract media portrayal of migrants into the people that we know and work alongside, who have come here to deliver public services and are supporting communities come together. Those conversations make a difference. That's why we work hand in hand with Hope Not Hate and their incredibly focused, evidence-driven work that feeds into our campaigns. And in the same vein, at the TUC this week, we launched the Unity Works campaign. This is a strategy across all unions based on talking to our members about the things they expect us to talk about. Things like cuts to services, things like how there is hope to build a better society if we work together. We know that these messages counter the messages of reform. They're based on our experience as workers, and we know that by coming together, we can achieve change. One area where we can show that working together wins change is the Employment Rights Act. It is our Employment Rights Act that people in this movement, across the trade union movement, won. It passed into law just before Christmas, but we've now got to make sure that it is delivered in workplaces. As Paul Novak from the TUC said this week, we want the full-fat Coke version of the Employment Rights Act, not the Diet Coke version of the Employment Rights Act. Because it is a genuine game changer. In a matter of days, workers in this country will be entitled to sick pay from day one for the first time in history. 0 hours contracts are going. Every worker will have the right to know their hours in their contract. Stronger protection against harassment at work, extended parental and bereavement leave, the school staff, school support staff and adult social care negotiating bodies. And for the first time, the tide of anti-trade union legislation has been turned back. The first time this has happened in generations. And this didn't happen by accident. It happened because of us, because we worked together across the movement, demanded action, and kept the pressure up. And that pressure cannot stop now. The challenge is to ensure that these reforms are implemented and the government doesn't cave. There's another area of UNISON's work that I'm particularly excited about this year, which is the 2026 year of green activity. As part of this, the unions put together a whole calendar of activity that members are getting involved in. Over 90% of our members surveyed recently said they were concerned about climate change. And we know that climate change and environmental injustice disproportionately affect poorer and black communities across the world. Many of our members are directly involved in preventing, preparing for, and protecting against the impacts of climate change. So we know this is something we have to be at the centre of. We also know that when we look at the cost of living crisis, that this disproportionately affects women. There has been a 29% increase in the economic gap between genders over the past year. And our low-paid women are too often on the receiving end, whether it's job cuts, outsourcing, and pay discrimination. Black women in particular continue to face combined impacts of racism, sexism, and pay inequality in the workplace. And standing up for low-paid women is a real focus for this year. Led by Catherine as president, we've been developing the Low Paid Women's Network, a campaign about visibility, dignity, and power, about making space for women who've been overlooked for far too long. Please look out for this activity in your regions and get involved, because this is about moving our work on low-paid women from having people just, we need to get people to fill seats. This is about making sure our low-paid women in the union are empowered, strong, and where they absolutely should be, right at the centre. So thanks for listening. It's always inspiring to see the strength, leadership, and activism of black members in UNISON. But there are many obstacles before us. But if we stand together, stand strong, our union has the power to fight back and the power to win. So let me wish you the best for your conference and to winning over the next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. James, can we ask you to just hold on there for a moment? Thank you for such a wide-ranging speech, and thank you. We really appreciate your solidarity. We have a small gift for you, and this will be presented by the Co-Deputy Chair, Annette Estop.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks, James, and thank you, conference. I would now like to call our next speaker, Reverend Clive Foster, MBE, Windrush Commissioner. Reverend Clive Foster, MBE, was appointed in June 2025 as the first Windrush Commissioner, an independent public role created to help deliver justice for those affected by the Home Office Windrush scandal. Reverend Foster is a senior minister of the Pilgrim Church in Nottingham and is the founder of the Nottingham Windrush Support Forum. He previously served as vice chair of the Windrush National Organization and multi-faith manager at Nottingham Trent University. Reverend Foster brings extensive experience in equality, diversity, and inclusion with a background spanning community leadership, public service, and business. Reverend Foster has long been involved in social justice work, particularly around racial inequality. His deep understanding through his own connections and dedicated community work makes him the perfect champion for those affected by this historic injustice. In recognition of his work, Reverend Foster was awarded an MBE in 2023 New Year Honors List and previously served as vice chair of the Windrush National Organization, advocating for affected communities in the UK and internationally. Reverend Foster has also contributed to national conversations on hate crime and community cohesion. Reverend Foster, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, and thank you to UNISON and to the National Black Members Conference for inviting me to be with you here today in Brighton. I just want to give a thanks to Councillor Joseph and Gloria, who has been very gracious in making me feel very hospitable here. And thank you, UNISON, for the role that you continue to play. Trade unions and UNISON in particular have stood long at the forefront of the fight for justice, fairness, and equality for black workers in this country. You've organized, challenged, and held power to account when it mattered most. And in the context of Windrush, when you did speak, this was crucial. You supported advocacy groups on the ground through funding, through amplifying voices, and through promoting the schemes that people needed to access. And I remember in Nottingham how the unions came to our aid when organizations and people weren't funding those advocacy groups. And when there was real fear in the community, you came forward. When individuals were trying to navigate confusion and fear, you helped create pathways for support. That legacy is not abstract. It is practical, and it's made a difference. So before I begin into the meat of this speech, I do want to say that at the end of my remarks, two of your fellow members, Hetticia and Van McIntosh, will briefly speak about their petition Justice for the Windrush Generation. And when I met them, I was humbled by their story. It was compelling. But more than that, it was a reminder of the very real impact behind all of this work. My office has been supporting them, and I would encourage everyone here to listen and closely to support their campaign. Because this work does not sit with one person, it does not sit with one office, it belongs to all of us. Now let me take you back for a moment. When the Windrush Generation came to the United Kingdom, they were not arriving by chance, they were invited. Britain needed workers to rebuild after the war, and it turned to the Caribbean and said, come and help us rebuild what for many affectionately referred as the mother country. And they did. Like my own father who worked in the factories and in the mines, like my own mother who worked in the NHS. They came in their thousands and built lives here. They staffed our hospitals, drove our buses, worked in our local government, in schools and in factories. They paid taxes, raised families, and became part of the fabric of British society. Many spent their working lives in the very public services that UNISON represents today. The NHS, local government, transport, care. These institutions were not just supported by the Windrush Generation, they were shaped by them. That is not fiction, it is the truth of modern Britain. And that is what makes what happened next so stark. Because decades later, people who had every right to be here were told that they did not belong. They lost jobs. They were denied health care. They were evicted. Some were detained, and some were even wrongly deported. People who had given their working lives in this country were treated as though they had no place in it. And I saw the impact of this firsthand. At the time when the scandal broke, people in my own congregation came forward, people who had lived quietly, worked hard, and suddenly found themselves gripped by fear and anxiety about their status. They came to me and saying, Clive, I'm really concerned about my grandfather. I'm not sure if he's going to get his security here. Clive, I'm concerned about my uncle. We've been telling him to get his documents sorted out. And I can see the fear in the families when the scandal was starting to emerge in 2017, 2018. These were not strangers, these were people who I knew. People who were unsure whether they belonged in a country they had called home for decades. And I tell you what, that stays with you. So let's be clear about what this was. It wasn't just a simple mistake. It was a systemic injustice that caused deep and lasting harm to individuals, families, and entire communities. And the effects of that injustice are still being felt today. There are people who are still seeking justice, still seeking recognition, still seeking for fair compensation. And it is important to recognize something else, particularly in a room like this. Many claimants who have come forward describing their experiences in terms of racial injustice, discrimination, and prejudice. Now, this is not what the compensation scheme was originally designed to assess, but it does tell us something really important. It tells us that alongside fixing the scheme, we must also recognize and respond to the lived experience of racial injustice. And we must ensure that those affected are properly supported. So while progress has been made, and it's important to recognize that, we cannot confuse progress with completion. Some of that progress has come directly from listening to those who've been affected, from people who spoke up about what was not working and what needed to change. As a result of my recommendations, we have seen older and more vulnerable claimants now prioritized. Recommendations that I've made to government, we now see advance payments introduced so people are not left waiting without support while their cases are being reviewed. And that means millions more pounds up front, up to 75% in people's pockets. And also, as a result of recommendations, pension losses are now properly recognised and compensated. And the remit of my role has expanded to include the Windrush status scheme because securing status is as fundamental as securing compensation. And that matters. But I know, and you know, that this is not enough, which is why the next phase of my work is so important. So my priorities going forward are very clear. Number one, improving the compensation scheme itself. This means that we get faster decisions, fairer outcomes, clearer communication. People should not have to navigate complexity to receive what they are owed and to receive it in their lifetime. Second, we need to strengthen and support those who are affected. That includes better access to legal advice and ensuring that the support is trauma-informed. Because this is not just about an administrative issue, it's a human one. Thirdly, going forward, I want to ensure that securing status is for everyone who's entitled to it, both here in the UK and overseas. No one should still be in doubt about their right to be here and to access those rights through the Windrush compensation and status scheme. And finally, I want to ensure that we're embedding the lessons of Windrush. Some of you may recall that there was a report done by Wendy Williams, the Windrush Lessons Learnt Review, 30 recommendations. This report is designed to change the culture and make recommendations to ensure that something like the Windrush scandal can never happen again. Not just acknowledging what went wrong, but in making sure and embedding that it cannot happen again. That means sustained scrutiny, and it means holding the Home Office to account. And alongside this, we are also working with local authorities through the newly launched Windrush Councils of Network. And I'm delighted that we've recently launched this, and to date we have 14 councils that are getting involved in this. And if you're here and you would like your council to get involved, please do contact my office. Because for many people who are affected, the first point of contact is not central government, but it's their local council. It's the residents in that area. And councils have an important role to play in this. This all sits within my wider set of strategic aims. Justice and healing for those affected. Prevention so that the same failures are not repeated. And a lasting legacy where the lessons of Windrush are finally understood and acted upon. And central to all of this is accountability. My role is to hold the government to account without fear or favour. And my title is the Independent Windrush Commissioner. I say that again, Independent Windrush Commissioner, and to speak and to act as a trusted voice and an advocate for the survivors, the Windrush communities, the organisations that have been affected by it, and to speak without fear or favour. Because I think we all recognise that trust has been broken on a big scale. And it can't be repaired by words alone. It requires action. It has to be rebuilt through action and through consistency and through transparency and through accountability that is real. Government can't do this alone. Community organisations, campaigners, trade unions, all have a critical role to play in ensuring that momentum is maintained and those affected are not left behind. The Home Office Windrush scandal is still alive, and it is an intergenerational impact that it's having. Not just on those first pioneers who came over in the early 50s and 60s and 70s. But we are seeing, as I go across the country, the intergenerational impact that it's having alongside the descendants. When the scheme was first set up, it was called the Windrush Status and Compensation Scheme and their descendants. And I want to say here that perhaps in your communities, there are people who are still being impacted as a result of this. I also want to note as well that the effects of the Windrush scandal is also a Commonwealth scandal. It is not assigned just to a few people from Caribbean communities. It is a Commonwealth scandal, and in fact, it goes beyond people from the Commonwealth who have been impacted. So, in coming down, I approach this role with a real sense of urgency. I'm a man in a hurry for justice, and in a hurry for justice which is built on compassion. I'm just into 8 months into a 3-year term, but the people who are affected don't have the luxury of time. Some of them don't have the luxury of waiting long. They've already waited too long. So I'm pushing for change. Change that is not just discussed, but change that is delivered. And what gives me confidence in this work is that I see rooms like this. Because solidarity is not just a word, it is action. Trade unions stood alongside Windrush-affected workers when the scandal came to light. And you continue to stand alongside them today. By keeping the issue on your agenda, by supporting campaigns, by creating space for voices like Hetticia and Van to be heard, that matters. It keeps the focus where it should be, on people. And I want to work with you in partnership on this. Not symbolically, but meaningfully. Because if we're serious about fairness, accountability, and restoring trust, then this has to be a collective effort. The Windrush generation did not ask for special treatment. They asked for fairness. They're asking for justice. They gave their skills, their labor, their lives for this country. And they should never have had to prove their belonging, but they did. And now, the responsibility sits with us to ensure that what they are owed is not delayed, diminished, or denied. So let us continue to work together with compassionate urgency, with honesty, and with a shared commitment to justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Reverend Foster. We have a small gift for you as well. Before I call upon Hetticia and Von, we have a small gift to give to you as well. Thank you very much once again. Reverend Foster has kindly introduced the next speaker that I'm going to call. Hetticia and Von McIntosh. They're going to just briefly talk about their experience, about their case in 2-3 minutes. Hetticia, Von, are you here? Okay. You got 2 minutes. You're welcome.
Good afternoon, conference. Thank you for the invitation. As you know, my husband's got a bit of a cold, so he's not coming up. My name is Hetticia McIntosh, and I don't like to say I'm a victim, I'm a survivor of the scandal I came here as an 8-year-old child. My mother was already here nursing. My husband came as a 5-year-old child, and his mother was also nursing. His father worked at Ford's Motor Company, and my stepfather was a bus driver. Now, our situation, I'm here not just for myself or my husband or my children who have been impacted, who were born here, but for all the other people that have been impacted, who are still fighting for justice. The petition that I'm here to speak about this afternoon was set up last year, June. We have nearly 20,000 signatures, and I'm here this evening to ask you to also join with us to call for justice, a call for fairness, accountability, and proper legal support for the Windrush generation. I grew here. I schooled here. I joined the British Army. I'm a veteran. I had my children here. But in 1978, my situation didn't happen in 2017. I started back in 1978 when I went to renew my British passport. I came here as a British subject. My island was not independent where I was born and spent the first 7 years of my life. I had the same status as people that was born here in the UK when I came. I had my children here, I married here. And yet still, as I said, I was in the army. And in 1978, when I went to renew my British passport, I was told I wasn't entitled, I am no longer British. That was 15 years after I had left. My husband, it happened to him in 1984. After applying for a British passport here in 1974, being issued a British passport here in 1974, which expired in 84, and the company he worked for was sold to an Indian company, Berger Paints India, and they were moving from Stratford to Chadwell Heath, and as a result of that, they wanted to upgrade their HR records. He needed to use proper identification for his records. New company, new ownership, new location. And what happened? Then his passport, when he checked it in 84, it was due to be renewed. It was issued in 74. That passport subsequently was denied renewal, which had a domino effect. We just bought a property. We were in our 20s. We had owned that property for about 3 years. We had a mortgage. He lost his job. We couldn't pay the mortgage. We had 3 small children, and our life turned upside down. And for the last 40 years, I am still here fighting. We only got our citizenship back in 2020. In 2020. And we are still currently fighting from 2021. This has been the hardest time of my life because of the compensation scheme that doesn't even want to acknowledge that they have done anything wrong. It's not even a compensation scheme. It's an ex gratia scheme. So we are fighting to get, because all other compensation schemes have legal representation. We, the black ones, don't have any legal representation. I can say I thank God for a young lawyer who took up our case pro bono. But I know there are many people who do not have that luxury. And it is not an easy 44-page application form to fill out. I am going to be 71. My husband turned 71 just 2 weeks ago. We are not spring chickens. We are not technically savvy. We need proper, and a lot of it is complex because they have not bargained for people like myself and my husband, who they have ruined our lives. And it's not just our lives. We were living between St. Lucia and England. My children who were born here, I had to take them away in order for my husband to be able to work to look after his family. We couldn't sign up on the dole at the time. We never have. We've always worked and contributed. And yet still, when my children came back to the UK, they could not get to go to university. They couldn't get a scholarship, what you call a grant. They told them they were not entitled. They had to be back in the country for how many years. So it has impacted their lives. And this is where they were born. So today I am here not to ask for sympathy, but for action. For action. Right? We have faced loss of jobs, denial of health care, separation from family, and years, decades of stress and uncertainty. Every time we came in, we were stamped as visitors. Visitors. And it was on the 27th of February, 2026, which is just a few weeks ago, that my husband was finally given an award. We're still fighting. After having 5 nil awards, I got 3 nil awards before they even acknowledged. There is something inherently wrong that needs to be addressed. I thank God for the commissioner and his team that stepped in from last year. And I'm trusting God that he will allow God to use him to bring about the change that is necessary for us as a people. When they said we were not here and looking for all kinds of excuses, DWP have me down. Ministry of Defense have me down. Have my husband working since 1971 when he left school. So we are in the system. But yet still, the Home Office want to say, as if they don't have any records on us, not until the 14th of September, 2018. 2018, as if we never existed. But I have passports with stamps, I was here, when they said they didn't know we existed until 2018, 2017, I was here twice. 2015, I was here twice. My mother lived from 1959 here in this country and died in 2021 in this country. I'm asking you, I think UNISON has a QR code with our petition for legal representation. I've written letters to Shabina Mahmood, to David Lamy, to Yvette Cooper, all the others that have been there before. And as I said, there are, in actual fact, 19,000 and how many hundreds who are supporting us currently. And I really and truly would love for you all to support and sign the petition because it is for legal representation and a proper change. We need to be respected. Thank you.